Talk to Cassius. Conversations with today's icons from business, sports, and entertainment. I'm your host, Cassius F. Butts. Welcome back to another episode of Talk to Cassius. We are excited today because we've got someone who knows a little bit more about green than many of us, and I mean green on the golf course. It is none other than Mr. Chad C. Parker, President and General Manager of East Lake Golf Club. Welcome to Talk to Cassius, Chad.
Really appreciate you having me. Looking forward to today's visit.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, you're talking about a day. Today is probably one of the prettiest days that we've had in Atlanta going into this year. But it's also some pretty exciting times for you as well, too. So for many people who are familiar who you are, and you had some pretty exciting events at your shop in the last couple years, just want to kind of just take a step back and just talk about really Chad Parker himself. Who was Chad Parker, and how did you actually wind up at a pretty cool place at East Lake? And so we'll just start off and just talk about where you're from, Chad, and how you wound up to Atlanta.
Sure. Again, I appreciate the opportunity. I grew up in Florence, Alabama, which is a small town up in the northwest part of the state. I had a great childhood there, played golf there growing up, and worked at a golf course as all throughout high school, etc. And found out about a program at Mississippi State University called Professional Golf Management, and so it was a degree inside of their business school. It was a business degree, or it is a business degree, with emphasis on turf grass and food and beverage and all the different facets of the golf industry. And so I was already planning to major in business. I'd already been accepted to attend the University of Alabama, and found out about this program and decided to go check it out. And fell in love with Starkville. You have to go there to love it. I'll just say that. It's not on a lot of people's radar, but it's once I got down there, I really fell in love with the university, and met people from all over the U.S. The major, it was interesting because it brought people in from all over the country, because there was only 4 universities at the time that offered that as a major. So people from the Northeast, Midwest, Southeast, Southwest. So it really kind of instantly, you were able to meet people from all over. So so that's kind of what how it started for me in golf, and then I ended up at East Lake through actually through one of my classmates. And Mississippi State was working there, and there was a position open, and power of networking. So I've been there now almost 25 years.
Wow. And most people don't realize, there's a lot of great golf courses actually in Mississippi. There's a lot of great land there. Talk about your time there, because think about having a major like that. When people think about it from that perspective, it's something that's new. What was your goal at that time? What were you thinking about? What role would I see myself after acquiring this degree?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question, because I took a class when I was at Mississippi State. There was a communications professor named Dr. Hank Flick. And he was the announcer at the PA for the basketball games, for the football games. And he was just a very unique character, and his classes were very sought after. And so I actually took a couple of his classes, even though they weren't required for my major, just because I'd heard how good he was. And as I'm sitting here telling the story, I see there's a cup on my desk, one of the few things I have on my desk at home that I got from this class, and the class was on interviewing. And so you'd appreciate this, doing what you're doing now. It wasn't a class on how to answer questions, or it really was a class on communication and nonverbal cues and all the different things that communications professionals do to get insight into people.
Sure.
And one of the exercises that he had us do in the class was he had us write very specifically what kind of job it was that we wanted when we, had made it. And it was like a 2 or 3 week long process. He kept probing, I want to be a head golf professional at a private country club. He's like, well, where's the country club located?
Right.
How many members does it have? And all these different things. And so I got down to a kind of an ideal scenario without 7 or 8 different attributes that I was looking for. And so that's where it started. And East Lake has checked all of those boxes. So that I really owe it to him and that class, like many of us,
Sure.
the power of education and the power of mentoring and the power of challenging folks. That's really what kind of made me focus on that. And, which I don't know that I would have done that without that class.
Wow. Wow. And that's amazing because you start to think about it. Sometimes you jump into an opportunity and you're really not sure what it's going to turn out, but it sounds like you just had a passion for the game and you were following your passion. And that we talk about that often. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can imagine if your folks were thinking, hey, I'm going to major in this and this is what I'm going to be. I know when I was picking my major, my dad was like, well, what are you going to do with that psychology degree? And I was like, Dad, I'm going to figure out why people do what they do. And really it helped me later on in the year. So it sounds like, figure out agreeing to something that really took you to a place because you had the mindset, you had a passion for it. So fast forwarding, right. you're at East Lake, and it's been some pretty interesting times at East Lake. You want to talk about that just briefly because it's been pretty exciting. The expansion of East Lake. Chad, if you could just talk about how has that affected the community in Atlanta?
Well, yeah, when I started there in '96, the Tuesday after the Olympics were over, East Lake was still very much a community in transition. The golf facility, the golf club was located right across the street from a housing development called East Lake Meadows. And it was known, throughout the city as a very poor, underserved area. And that had been neglected, like many parts, in many places all over the U.S., it just had been neglected. And the drug trade was rampant. There was no focus on, education. And it was just a very, it was very blighted. And, I remember those days. I remember walking into work my first day on a Tuesday at 11 o'clock, and I heard gunfire. And I was like, well, this is, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. But East Lake Meadows was still there when I started, and it was torn down, shortly thereafter, and the new East Lake community was built there, with the goal of trying to create a model that if the right resources and focus were put in place, no matter who you are, if you were in the right environment, you can succeed. And that really was the goal from the outset. And so, our motto is golf with a purpose. And, we operate as a for-profit business, but we're owned by a nonprofit. And so any funds that we make through our operations or by hosting tournaments, that goes right back into the work. And now fast forward, to 2021, the model that East Lake created is almost in, or it's in almost 30 cities now across the U.S. And growing. And so that's through a network called Purpose Built Communities. So it's been amazing to be part of. And, it's been tough work, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But, and it really, it's never going to end because of it, it's a never ending process. But what I think we've proven is that if you have the resources and the focus, doesn't matter what your, situation is, you can make it if you have the same chance as everyone else.
Sure. And it's interesting that you talk about that, Chad, because we actually have seen that community develop and create and be created into something that's really has a huge national attention. The championship series have been there. It's now in a robust stage now. And, it's been pretty exciting seeing its development. Talk briefly, Chad, about the championship series and what that has meant to East Lake and just you being a part of that.
Yeah, sure. When I started, we were slated to have the first event in 1998, so we had a few years to get ready. It was very nerve-wracking, to be honest. Putting on that kind of event. And now this past year was my 20th time to host, and certainly last year was a lot different with COVID and all the restrictions and no fans and all that kind of stuff. But every year I've learned something different. It's been. But to answer your question, what it's meant to our effort, I mean, we couldn't have a better partner than we have in the PGA Tour. They have really committed to the city of Atlanta. They've committed to our mission along with the sponsors, throughout the years. Now our two proud partners are Coca-Cola and Southern Company, two great companies in Atlanta that have big hearts for giving and community. So I think you put all those things together with the facility that we have and the history that we have at Eastlake, and something magic has happened. And so, I think you just take, I remember standing on the porch on the 18th hole when Tiger was coming down the fairway in 2018.
Yeah.
And, thinking about the parallels of the power of redemption. And, for him personally, all the stuff that he went through, he persevered through it, and he came out on the other side, and he won our event, and then he won the Masters, 4 or 5 months later. So, and then I just thought about all the work that we put into it. And I was just so proud of all the hours and hours, especially the grounds crew had put in to create that stage for that moment to happen. And so the moment doesn't last that long, but it's a year-long, thing for us. We talk about it every single day. And you hope something like that happens, and it's, of course, it probably will never happen again, but it did happen, and that's something that we'll always be known for. And that just, and the other thing that I knew that it was going to be great for our event financially. I mean, there was a lot of people there. Tiger brings out, he brings the fans out, and there's no one else that does that like him. There's not even a close second.
Wow.
And so, for him for it to happen to, him there, I just thought it was so neat, and I knew it was going to be great for our event, and it's certainly the next year, we were going, to heights we'd never been before in 2019, and then of course 2020 hit. It put the brakes on everything, but we're thinking, we're already building for 21 and hoping that we can have as many fans as is safe to do so, and we'll continue to grow and build the event. But it means a ton to the work that we're able to do. The amount of support that we get from the event, from the city of Atlanta, the people that buy tickets, et cetera. It's just a wonderful community effort.
Oh, wow. And, it was interesting that you talk about that, Chad, because this past year was in the unique situation, and really for the entire world for that matter, but you were still able to press on to do some pretty unique things on those grounds, even in the COVID environment. Talk about how that all came together, because, people thought that, it just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, well, I think that, we started talking, with the tour immediately, as soon as everything shut down. And as they were trying to think, we were actually at the Players Championship, which was the last event, if you remember, in March that was played, and they canceled it on Friday. So we were down there meeting with the tour on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of that week, just to look at what they were doing down there, which is a phenomenal. What they've done in Jacksonville at Sawgrass is phenomenal. What they do for the fans, and et cetera. So we were looking at really back of house stuff. There, we weren't really watching too much golf, and just seeing how they do things and trying to get better. And so, once that happened, almost immediately we started talking about what does that mean for us. So you have to look at it on a couple different levels. One, you look at the conditioning of the golf facility. So that is one thing that did not change. So the expectations for the playing conditions did not change, and so we had a plan in place for that. It was more difficult with COVID because, just take, for instance, two guys, in a golf cart. So I have a project that I need done on the golf course, and two guys usually would get in a golf cart and go do that project. Now you can only have one person riding the golf cart, and that person's wearing a mask, and they have to be away from each other. So all of the things that, that happened, especially early on, impacted our ability to be ready, but it didn't change the fact that we had to be ready.
Right.
And then, as everyone remembers, back in the summer, all the different health regulations,
Yes.
The guidelines from the Department of Health, and how many people could be in a room, all of that, it didn't constantly change, but it changed, very regularly. And so we had to react to that. And then, luckily for us, there were several other events that were played before us. And so we were able to learn from what they did, and incorporate those into what we could do. The challenge was the rules may be different in Columbus, Ohio, than they are in Atlanta, Georgia, in terms of, the health regulations and all that kind of thing. So, my biggest fear, to be honest, was having enough staff to do it.
Yeah.
And so we had to be super careful. We had no issues at all with COVID in terms of an outbreak. We had people with cases, but as soon as we had a case that isolated, so we had to have, staff to be able to put that event on. And so we were really super diligent about that. But it was a definite learning experience. It was a very weird experience being there and sitting at my desk and watching the television, and there's no fans there, and I don't have anything to do really. Once the event starts, I mean, it's there's nothing really that you can do. There was no interaction with the players. I mean, they were very focused on themselves and their health, which is what they need to be doing. It was, from someone who thrives in the hospitality space, not to be able to provide hospitality is a tough thing. And that's something I've struggled with personally this whole year, is just not being able to do service and, do things that we normally would do. So I'm looking forward to the day that that can happen, but we realize we have to be safe. We have to follow the rules and really, for us, we're televised at the Tour Championship in September, and we have a college event in November, also televised. So, we had to be ready for that as well. So it was a very, we learned a lot, just like all of us did this past year.
Well, it definitely seemed like it's been a lot, but it's also seemed like it's been very rewarding. And if you've got a great team also that you work, who are some of the folks that you would say you stand out that's helped to make East Lake what it is today? Who are some of those champions you would say?
Well, we do have a fantastic team, and we've got great partners, and it starts with that. So if you look at internally, our director of agronomy, Ralph Keppel, and his team, led by Charles Aubrey, who's the golf course superintendent. Those guys did a phenomenal job this year. The golf course looked, amazing on television. I'll tell you something that was interesting. With no structures and no extra things, we knew that people were going to be able to see more of the golf facility. And so that changed how we thought about certain things as well. Luckily, we had already embarked on a 2-year plan to kind of do a light renovation of the building in terms of painting and do that kind of thing. And so on television, the building looked really, really good because it was all refreshed. And, we washed the bricks and we fixed some things. We knew that optically, with high def cameras and now 5K or 4K technology on your television, you're going to see a lot. And that was something that was important to us. It was an opportunity for us. So that's something that was in the back of our mind. So, those two people in particular. And then, you take someone like our building engineer. He didn't realize that at the start of the year that he was going to have to be spraying or fogging our building once a week. Yeah. And the housekeeping staff. I mean, everyone's job changed, and everyone was asked to do more, and you had to do it wearing a mask and gloves and cleaning everything, and it wasn't easy. And I would say those guys, and then the golf department we have, led by Drew Dunn, our director of golf. I mean, we had to lay off all of our part-time staff. So our full-time people were all we had, and they were doing everything, picking the range, everything. And that's just the way it was in 2020. There was no opportunity really for any kind of advancement in the traditional sense. But if you take what you've learned because of what happened last year, it may be the biggest learning experience you've ever had. I know it will be for me. I mean, it wasn't anything I learned in a book or took a class on, right. But you learned that you could that you could make it through some really tough times and constant curveballs. And then you look at the part. I mean, you look at the sponsors, what they did, what Coca-Cola and Southern Company did this year, that allowed for our charitable donation not only to meet last year's, but it exceeded last year's. Right. With no fans, no on-site revenue. Is truly amazing, and that money is needed now more than ever due to COVID. I mean, that helped people, not to get evicted. It helped people pay bills. It helped buy food. It helped a lot buy computers for kids. I mean, there's all kinds of things that was needed and even more. And so that's really kind of the headline to me of this pandemic. It really, and others can talk more eloquently than I can about this, but it really just put on display how unequal, parts of America are. And if you're in a certain place, you don't have good Wi-Fi, or you don't have a screen that you can learn on. I mean, you're not going to do as well as somebody that does. You're just not. And so it was really, I would mention all those, and I mentioned the tour earlier, but
Sure.
it took everybody. I mean, it really did, and I'm real proud of what we were able to accomplish.
Well, I'll tell you, as you know, I was fortunate to serve on that committee, and I really saw a lot of what you really took. It's one of those things, Chad. You really took the lemons and you made some lemonade. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's one of the best ways I can really describe it, and it's something that was really phenomenal. But as we start this and wrap up, Chad, what do you see going into 2021, 2022? I know it's hard to predict. We have COVID, folks getting tested. We're trying to stay safe. But what do you see as far as the immediate future for Eastlake?
Well, we looked at the last 2 quarters of 2020. We looked at our business. We looked at how people are acting, and we think the first 2 quarters of 21 will be very similar. Now, I think that you'll begin to see some, maybe some tendencies that you're going to be a little more willing to do some things that you haven't done in the past. Take, for instance, eating inside. Some people just aren't going to do that.
Right.
Some people are okay with it, and then there's some people in the middle. So I think that will be something you'll see more of. But from a business planning standpoint, we're really looking at the last 2 quarters of this year as somewhat more normal. The encouraging thing to me is, I follow the governor on Twitter, and I see every single day how many people have been vaccinated. And I look up the population of Georgia, and it's 11 million roughly, or thereabouts. And we've given out a 1 million vaccinations. I was like, well, I'm not that great at math, but that sounds like about 10%, or close to it, of our fellow citizens have been vaccinated, which is a great thing. So I think the more of those kind of markers you see, I think the rhetoric, politically is calming down is a great thing. It provides a level of calming, and it just seems like there's more concrete things to kind of put yourself, to kind of land on. And so, the one other thing that I would mention that I forgot to mention about, COVID, when you asked about the partners, the one thing that we did that was tremendously rewarding during COVID is we did a couple of different food events at Eastlake.
Yep.
And those were led by our executive chef, Nick Barrington. And we did one in April, and we did one in May. And then he actually started one weekly at the Eastlake YMCA. And those were, so impactful to see people lining up to get food. And, we've all seen the images on television, but to actually work a couple of those, and to see people in those cars that you recognize, that you may not know exactly where you know them from.
Yeah.
And it happened to me. I was directing traffic, and there was a guy. I was kind of checking people in. The heartbreaking thing is people, they would have their papers, they would have their unemployment papers, and they would try to show it to you.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't need to see that. We're gonna get food for you. But people were really struggling. And, I saw a guy, and we checked him in. I was making small talk as the line was going. Like 2 months later, maybe the first time we went out to eat, we went to a restaurant here in Emmons Park that we frequent, and we sat at the bar, and there was like 6 people in the restaurant. Yeah. We're sitting there, and the guy behind the bar finally said something to me. He goes, "You were at that food event at Eastlake, weren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well," I just want to say thanks, because I was one of the guys that, that got through, because I hadn't worked in 6 months.
Wow.
And, that really hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
And so, I hope that, that people, that we all will go back and support restaurants, and, those people have been disproportionately impacted by all this. And I think that, I think that'll happen. I know I'm tired of cooking at home. So let's hope that's the number one thing that happens soon.
Chad, man, I really appreciate you sharing that story. And that's really what this is almost all about, is really talking about beyond just our names and our titles. There's so many people doing so many positive things,
yeah.
And people really need to hear that now. So, I really appreciate you sharing that. You also do some work also with the Atlanta Humane Society. You're a volunteer there as well too, right?
Yep. I just rolled off the board I was on their board for a couple of years, and I'm still a huge supporter. Actually focusing more on, some things that we're trying to do from a diversity and inclusion standpoint in golf. I just saw that I think there's an opportunity there. And so there's some things that, maybe I'll be able to talk to you about the next time we visit. Your friend and my friend, Dr. Kevin Woods, has been a great sounding board for some ideas that we're trying to talk about. So
Yes.
I just want to, kind of focus some time there, because I think that, but yeah, the Humane Society is a great organization, and you're getting ready to, in the capital campaign, building new headquarters, and they do an amazing, those people are amazing. The staff there in particular is just, so impressive. So, but I think it's important to get involved. And the reason I did that is because I didn't know anybody on their board. I didn't know how their organization worked, and I wanted to be challenged in a different way. I think that's an important lesson that, you probably learned it, and I learned it through Leadership Atlanta. It's,
Right.
It's important that you get outside of your comfort zone and challenge yourself. So that's what I did. But yeah, that's a great organization for sure.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and we're looking forward to having Dr. Woods come on soon. He's got a new role he's leading up, and we're excited to talk to him about that. And so, Chad, I really want to thank you for your time today. It's been very, very informative, and really, I think a lot of people will be inspired knowing that it's good to be on the green, but it's also good to be behind those doors and making things happen for other people, just inspiring them and being in a position to help people to keep their heads up, raised high. So thank you for sharing that. We hope we can have you back soon. Maybe when things start to get a little bit easy outside, eh?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to come on anytime, and I'm look forward to listening to some of your other guests, and wish you all the best with this new initiative you're doing, and appreciate, again, the opportunity to speak with you.
He's Chad Parker. He is president and general manager of East Lake Golf Club. Thank you so much for being with us today, Chad. We look forward to having you back soon. And remember, continue to follow your passion. You'll be certain never to become lost. See you next time.